As nurses, we need to understand the anatomy and physiology of the various body systems that we're talking about when we're talking about disease processes and nursing interventions. Our 203 class will not go into great detail on previously taught anatomy and physiology, but it's important that we're all on the same page and have this basic foundation. So this and other voiceover PowerPoints are intended to help you review some of the key parts of the anatomy and physiology for the system that we're dealing with today, the musculoskeletal system. Movement is essential to human life. As nurses, we take in and notice a great deal about our patients' musculoskeletal system that doesn't exactly cause our attention to be drawn to it or get our notice, unless it's something very, severe or serious, such as a limp or disability or deformity or something. However, assessment of the musculoskeletal system goes deeper than just noticing the basics, the obvious. It's built on knowing the basic anatomy and physiology. So we're going to review those topics here, and you may need to go into more depth on your own to really expand that if this is very distant for you. Bones and muscles are the major parts of the musculoskeletal system, but there are also accessory structures that assist with movement. We are going to briefly review joints, bursa, ligaments, tendons, and fascia. Joints occur in places where bones meet and move in relation to each other. The three types of joints are diarthrosis, synarthrosis, and amphioarthrosis. We are mostly concerned with diarthrosis, which are freely movable joints enclosed in a capsule filled with synovial fluid. Some examples of locations where these occur are hips, knees, and elbows. Synarthrosis joints are immovable, with fibrotic tissue present. An example of this are the bones that connect in the skull. Amphioarthrosis are slightly movable joints, and examples of this are cartilage, vertebrae, and pelvic bones. Bursa are connective tissue sacs within the joint capsule or over a bony prominence. They are filled with synovial fluid which lubricates and reduces friction between bones. When bursa become inflamed, it's known as bursitis. This can be caused by injury from repetitive movement or by trauma to the area. Ligaments connect bones together and provide structure to joints. They permit controlled movement but limit movements that could damage the joint. Tendons attach muscles to bones, extending from the muscle in a sheath that attaches to the periosteum of the bone. Both tendons and ligaments have poor blood supply, so if the tissue is injured, it can take a long time to heal. Fascia are connective tissues that lie under the skin, around muscles, nerves, and blood vessels. Regarding the musculoskeletal system, fascia help muscles glide and provide strength. You may remember the term cartilage from your anatomy class. It is a precursor or model for later bone formation in the embryo. Most cartilage is replaced by bone through the process of growth and development, but some cartilage remains cartilage, even in adults. There are three types. The hyaline cartilage contains a moderate amount of collagen fibers. And places that this is found is like the trachea, the bronchi, the nose, and on the ends of bones in joint capsules. There's elastic cartilage, which is a mix of collagen and elastic fibers. And places where we find this are the ear, epiglottis, the larynx. And then there's fibrous cartilage, which is tough, shock-absorbing tissue made of collagen fibers. We find this protective cushion between bones of the spine, the knee, and the shoulder. Cartilage also has a poor blood supply, so if it becomes healed through tearing or injury, it also requires extended healing time. Next, we're going to talk about bones, and then we'll finish up discussing muscles. Bones serve multiple functions for humans. They provide the structure that lets us stand, bear weight, move, and interact with our environment. They also protect important organs and structures, such as the ribs protecting our heart, lungs, and kidneys, or our skull protecting our brains. Bones have hematopoietic tissues that produce the formed elements of the blood, such as red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Bones also store material that is both organic, such as collagen, proteins, and connective tissue, and inorganic, such as minerals. Some minerals that are stored in bone are calcium and phosphorus. Bone is alive. It grows, it changes, and it remodels itself constantly over our lifetime. Bones can be either cortical or dense or cancellous, spongy, depending on the type of bone or the location in the body. Cortical bones is very dense and strong, like the shaft segment of a long bone, also known as diaphysis. This dense structure is made up of osteons, or also known as haversian systems, which look like cylinders snuggled up next to each other. The osteons have haversian canals running parallel to the length of the bone, and these canals contain blood vessels that supply the bone with blood. In the cortical shaft, the center is filled with red or yellow marrow. Cancellous bone is spongier than cortical bone, and it has gaps between the tissues that are filled by red or yellow marrow. Blood reaches the cancellous bone by passing through the spaces. Cancellous bone occurs, for example, at the ends of long bones. They help to distribute the weight evenly and to stabilize the joints. Red marrow produces red blood cells, platelets, and most of the white blood cells. Yellow marrow has more adipose tissue and produces some of the white blood cells. Bone mass is maintained by a balance between osteoblasts, which make new bone, and osteoclasts that break it down. Osteoblasts are cells that make new bone by producing a matrix that becomes mineralized. Osteoblasts produce many products, including growth factors and alkaline phosphatase. Eventually, the osteoblast becomes surrounded by a bone matrix that has become calcified, and when it is thus trapped, it becomes an osteocyte or mature bone cell. An osteoclast is a bone cell that is responsible for the dissolution of bone and for its reabsorption. Osteoclasts produce acids that dissolve the minerals and collagen in the bone. They then surround and digest the remaining fragments. Calcium and phosphorus are released back into the bloodstream when bones are broken down. We classify bones by their appearance: long, short, flat, or irregular. Long bones have a central shaft with two widened ends, for example, the femur, the tibia, the radial bones. Short bones occur in areas such as the hands and the feet. There are 27 bones in one hand and 26 bones in one foot. Flat bones exist in ribs, the skull, scapula, and the sternum. Irregular bones are just what they sound like. There are a variety of shapes, sizes, and locations where they occur, such as the ear, the mandible, and the vertebrae. Now we are going to move on to talking about muscles. There are 3 types of muscles. Skeletal will be our main focus for this class. Skeletal muscle requires neuron stimulation for contraction. They are under voluntary control, unlike the other 2 types. The muscle cell is a long cell with great metabolic capability. The sarcomere is a contraction unit that shortens as a result of nerve stimulus. Skeletal muscle represents the majority of the muscle tissue in our bodies. These muscles have lots of mitochondria for producing energy and can sustain high levels of activity. Cardiac muscle is also very important to us, but we will look at that more in 4th semester. Smooth muscle is found in arteries, airways, the GI system, the bladder, the uterus. Smooth muscle is influenced by neuronal and hormonal substances for contraction. Both cardiac and smooth muscle are involuntary muscles. There are 650 muscles in the human body, and they make up about 50% of our body weight. The main function of muscles is movement. Muscles are attached to the skeleton by tendons, so contraction of the muscle, or shortening of it, causes the bone to move. Movement occurs as a result of both isometric and isotonic action. Muscles are the only type of cell in the body that is able to contract and move other parts. Maintaining posture or whatever position is chosen by the person is another function of muscle. Hypertrophy is the enlargement in size of a muscle. Atrophy occurs when muscles aren't used for long periods, such as an arm that is been in a cast and when the cast is removed looks very skinny, or the legs of a person who is paraplegic. Heat is generated by the conversion of ATP to ADP, which creates energy from muscular contraction. When muscles run out of ATP to use, it creates more lactic acid, which leads to muscle fatigue and pain. What we call muscles are actually groups of individual muscle cells or fibers. These groups are surrounded by fascia, which helps muscles slide over each other or over other structures. When a muscle cell is adequately stimulated, it will contract. Muscle cells need a nerve impulse in order to be stimulated to contract. That impulse is conveyed by a neurotransmitter such as acetylcholine, traversing the synapse from the nerve to the muscle cell. This nerve and muscle connection is known as a neuromuscular junction. Muscle tone means that skeletal muscles are in a constant state of readiness for action. This concludes the review of anatomy and physiology for the musculoskeletal system. Here are some movement terms that you should be able to use, identify, and use in your speech as a nurse. Flexion, extension, hyperextension, eversion, inversion, adduction, abduction, circumduction, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, pronation, and supination. See you in class.